Hello, hello. Welcome, everyone.
Hello, hello. Welcome. Hello,
So,
Scott. Simon.
yes, it's a very special event. I mean, what did everyone yesterday, right? Flutter Engage. Oh, we got so much to talk about.
Man. A lot. I was so excited. Yesterday I had a cup of tea in front of me, and during the keynote, I was just trying to drink, and then suddenly say, "Oh wow, now again." I couldn't drink my tea. It was so much good news. So I think everyone had the same feeling.
Chris Sells' article is marked as. Sorry, we got a little bit of lag, so that happens.
Yeah. So welcome today. We've got some very special guests joining us today. Let's introduce ourselves. My name is Simon Lightfoot, Flutter community leader. I also work at Dev Angels in London, a small development agency, and you can get me on at Dev Angels London on Twitter. Scott.
And I am Scott Stahl. I am also a community leader. I lead GDG Cleveland, and also have been working with Humpday Q&A and the Flutter community medium. Majid.
And my name is Majid Hajian, a proud community leader and Google developer expert for Flutter and Dart.
And we'll be introducing other members as we go through. For now, Majid, tell us about the do's and don'ts.
Mr. Code of Conduct. I'm here again. So our code of conduct is pretty simple. So we would like you to behave well and respect each other when you are commenting and saying something in the chat. So please be respectful. Thank you.
Okay, so the formal stuff is out of the way. I mean, just how much information was blasted at me yesterday, I just can't even guess. Right.
As I was saying, Chris Sells wrote an article about it that's marked as 18 or 19 minutes. It took me an hour because I just kept stopping and rereading, and I was like, "What?" Because I mean, you might think that we get secret information. No, we don't.
Yes.
There's a reason that we were not broadcasting at the same time, because we didn't want you to see us go, "What?"
What was I've got a question for both of you. What was the feature that you really most enjoyed? Like, I don't know, want to get your hands on?
It's very hard, actually, Simon. It's a very hard question because I'm very excited for all of the things. But in particular, maybe I was a little bit more excited for the Toyota and choosing Flutter and running the embedded version of Flutter in the cars. That was very interesting to me.
It was 2019 when I was over in We Are Developers, and BMW were doing their presentation about what they were doing with Flutter as well. I'm surprised it took them so long, and I'm really glad we're getting more embedded stuff happening, because it really is so powerful to have Flutter running on those embedded systems. Personally, desktop's a thing for me. Actually, before Flutter, it was before Flutter Live. So what was that, 2018? Oh, so long ago now. Me and Norbert came up with a way of doing desktop, right? When desktop wasn't even a thing with Flutter, and everyone was just loving it. And I remember Hixie saying this yesterday. It stood out to me. When you run your mobile app and it just works on desktop, you see it working on desktop. It's just there's that sort of like exciting. It's so exciting to see that actually just running in front of you. I don't know what I can't put a finger on what it is, but it's like, oh wow, it just worked.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, for many people who has done desktop, Simon, this was a very interesting news, because you know how hard it could be to develop a desktop application for different platforms. But now you have it in one single code base, and it's working. Just works.
my personal hope is that all these companies that are using Electron, and there's not one versus the other. I'm not going to get there, but I see these Electron apps as being like gigabytes of installation, and they take up gigabytes of memory, and it's just like it's like please use Flutter, and we'll slowly get use of our computers back. You know, like we don't have to have 32 gigabytes of RAM just to run a few apps. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, for me personally, there was so much. Web is production ready. Do you have any idea how many times when consulting for various companies, when do you think it'll be production ready? When is it ready? Job interviews. What do you think of web? Is it ready? SEO. What about Jenk? Is it ready? Oh my God. You can finally stop asking me, people. It is production ready. Then, of course, desktop. Now, I'd like to read something real quick from Chris's article. He's talking about desktop, and he's saying that you use the early release flag. And I want to read this quote. What this means is that we're ready for you to give it a try as a deployment target for your Flutter apps. You can think of it as a beta snapshot that previews the final stable release coming later this year. Desktop to stable.
Yeah.
Yes. It's not just that desktop is advanced, it's going to stable.
I think the key for me, and I'm sure we'll hear more from the Googlers later, right? But for me, I think I see this as they want to get out there in everyone's hands, get you to build your apps with desktop. And if there's any issues, they can get them resolved now while it's in beta. And then later on, we can make that stable. But yeah.
And that's really, really important, folks. The Flutter team is never going to be given the budget for 1,000 people, which is what they would need to do everything we want. And don't forget, it's open source. Okay. Some of this is on you. If you want something, you have the power. Okay. You're capable of it. And I just want to mention one other thing real quick that I was excited about was all of the dev tools and the plugins for VS Studio, for IntelliJ, for Android Studio. I just want to ask one thing though. Okay. Flutter team, what about Emacs? Okay. Where's the love? Where's the love, guys?
Oh yeah. I'm sure there's an Emacs shortcut for that, right? So I want to mention just right now, we didn't say it. Humpday Q&A, hashtag Humpday Q&A, tweet, retweet, comment, ask your questions. That's the thing to use so we can find all your stuff. So if you don't tag it, we don't find it. Feel free to ask your questions in the YouTube chat, wherever that is. And we'll be getting to those with the hosts. Yeah, there you go. Answer your questions in the live chat. There you go.
It's Vim. I see it. I thought about it, but I didn't want to pile too much on. Yes, Vim too. No love for Vim.
I mean, and we'll jump into a bit more in a minute, but there is a couple more things I'd like to just talk through. Null safety, right? Null safety.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I've been playing around with it, and exactly what some of the guys from Flutter were talking about yesterday, which was try and migrate the packages first. So if you try and migrate your library, if you've got any dependencies, go raise an issue ticket and get them to migrate. And I personally have some packages that I need to migrate. So yeah, the more that I think everyone gets these notifications, all these package and plugin authors get these issue tickets raised to migrate or get that full migration path happening, and you'll get all your apps migrated over to null safety for the better of everyone. I mean, it's really good.
Or if you can even send a PR to those libraries. Be active in the community.
Please do, yeah, please do. There is an article actually on the Dart Medium page, which I'd like to direct everyone to at some point, and that is they have a really good article about how they've sped up Dart just by taking up those null checks, and it goes through a bit about the internal workings, but it's really interesting to see that step by step they take it through you. And if we can find the URL, we'll get that in the chat for you.
Nice.
Is there anything? Some of the, I mean, we'll be discussing some of the other things today. I think we'll be discussing the Microsoft stuff in a minute, but Canonical and Ubuntu. I mean, wow, right?
That was wow.
I saw some posts, some news articles that were posting about them using on the installer and a few other things, but it didn't really. Till I saw that this is the de facto, now the default way we want you to build apps is with Flutter on Ubuntu. That's a big change. It's a huge thing.
It's almost scary. Yeah, it just, wow. And that's going to become a huge subject. We are in discussions with somebody from Ubuntu to have them on the stream. We don't know what their schedule looks like, but watch Twitter, really. And one other thing I just want to touch on is when you have a native app and you're porting to Flutter, as they say, they want you to use add to app to do it a piece at a time, because you can do a piece. If you have problems, you can fix that before going on to anything else. But when using multiple instances of Flutter in the same app, it was costing quite a bit of static memory. Okay. So in Flutter 2, they've moved it, tweaked it, and now the cost of creating additional Flutter engines after the first one has been reduced by about 99%.
That's very nice.
Just wow.
One thing I just skimming through this article right now. Another interesting point: the Flutter Folio from G. Skinner. Right, we've wanted a de facto way of saying, look, go look at this. This is how you do adaptive layouts. Go look at this. It works on these different devices and these different layouts. And I think we'll hear more about that. But that's really powerful. I think for everyone to go check out for certain.
Can I also point out the community effort on this release? Let's just read a few numbers, which Chris Sells mentioned in the blog post. Look at that number: around 24,000 issues was closed, and around 17,000 POs was merged. Like, just look at this number, and 765 contributors. Wow, it's just wow! Like, how active and how active is this community, and they are helping to get this framework to go to the next stage.
And there are really a lot of great people who did this, but I do want to give a shout out to one in particular. I am going to butcher your name. I'm sorry, but Yazid Al-Khalaf,
yes,
16 years old. Okay. And he's one of the lead people reviewing PRs. He's doing a lot of work. Big shout out there. So, and just to let you know what kind of a future you have, the last person I know who started in Flutter at 16 is now the lead editor of Flutter Community Medium publication, and they have over 1 million minutes read every month. So you're going places.
All right. So now we have guests special guests. We need to invite them, Simon and Scott, I believe. Let's here we go. Flip is with us. Hello, Flip.
Hey, hello. Hi.
Sorry for that.
I thought that, I didn't realize. Cheers. I thought that I would be coming later, but it's great. Yes, hello.
We have some surprise for you, right? You have a lot of surprise for us, but we just surprised you.
Yeah, well,
you can come back later too.
No. I'm good. Well, I was listening, kind of half listening, and I agree, especially about the community contributions, about the 16-year-old person who's like reviewing stuff, and also, of course, like, we're very excited that all of these things landed finally, and that we can say about things that they are stable, or at least more stable than before. And of course, I drive a Toyota, so I'm also very very glad that they went there. And I also have Ubuntu on my machine, not this one, and that's also really really nice. So like if you remember 2 years ago, it was about like Hamilton and like cool studios in New York where the main items on the agenda, and now it's Toyota, Ubuntu, and Canonical and Microsoft. So yeah, we've come a long way.
I have to say that the team's effort on null safety has been like, that's got to be a mountain that everyone has been climbing. It's massive.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Well, it's
not that hard to get used to.
Yeah,
right.
I'm glad, because I know that it's going to still require quite a lot of adjustment and migration, and migrations can be frustrating, and especially if you don't like really understand null safety, which is like we all kind of come to null safety not understanding it. So I hope that the kind of people will have patience. And but once as you know, once you're null safe and once everyone else is null safe, it's a pleasure, I think, to use a null safe code base. But that time when you need to make it null safe kind of
it reminds me of the time when we got Android X, right? And there was that hump to kind of get over everyone upgrading their plugins to Android X compatibility, and this is always going to be the way though. But it's a bit like when you get a new operating system, trying to get used to that kind of newfangled way of doing things, right? So once you get over the hump, it's smooth sailing. But
I agree. Yeah, I think it's we had that similar. Like Dart is kind of doing this all the time. Well, twice we did this, right? Like before it was the static types versus dynamic types, and that was also a pain, but also really paid off in the performance and developer experience. So
just one quick little point for people who are starting out with the null safety. One of the points that drove me a little bit crazy at first was when you're looking at a package and your package is coming up that it's not null safe, go to the web page on pub.dev. Underneath the title of the package, there's going to be in small print on the right side that says where the null safe version is. Click on that and use that one in your pub spec YAML. You'll be good.
I think we've got preview now, right?
Yeah, that's preview, but now it's not preview anymore because now the stable version supports null safety. So now, like the ones that had preview before, now just should have that version as their main version. And those that, but you're right, Scott, about those that haven't yet released the kind of the official version and still do like dash null safety or dash def or something like that. That will be there, and you have to kind of go searching for it.
Just want to read to reiterate. If you've got any questions for Philip, please enter them in the live chat, and we'll see if we can get to them. In the meantime, is there anything I want to know, Philip? Is there anything out of the release that really excited you? Like, is the one that is on the top of the list for you personally?
Well, I mean, I have to say null safety, right? It's like, but I really like. Wait, what was there? The UI work as well. The new button universe. I haven't really used it that much, but that's the kind of the update of buttons, which were kind of like organically getting a little bit ugly.
So you mean the going from the raise button to the elevate button stuff?
Yes. So just making things easier to use, easier to theme, and so on. And I think that's been, it's again a lot of work there and paid off.
Can we touch on button styles for a moment? Because that one I went to try to change the color of a button and I hit a wall. So
did you use
can you touch on that?
Yeah. So did you use the new ones or the old ones, like flat button or the new ones?
Oh no, I don't use deprecated buttons. Come on, Philip. Come on. Yeah. I thought you thought more of me than that.
Yeah. No, I don't know when you said I used, like it could be
no, it was an elevated button.
Okay. Yeah. I don't actually so I can't really help because I'm very glad about the fact that it exists and it's there, and I played with it like 5 minutes. But I can't really help it. I just have to trust that it's easier to theme than before.
So the one I saw start, you can do is it style from? There's like elevate button dot style from context, and then you can then customize that in place if you want to within that instance of the button. But it's all themable from the styles, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I got a question here actually. We're just going to bring this up. Sorry, Mijid. Do you guys know what about the primary crucial Flutter plugins like Camera? Will they also be on all of primary platforms? I always struggle with the plugin support. It's a good. I think the question here is like, now we've got more platforms, right? Are we going to get all of the Flutter plugins supporting all those platforms?
Yeah, particularly on desktop, I suppose.
Yeah.
So I will just say, Majid, like, do you want to talk about plus plugins quickly and what the community's been doing there? And
of course, I can say something, but Philippe can answer as well. So, well, we believed in Flutter community that even if Flutter team doesn't do some stuff for us, we still, as a community, can do that, right? So we forked a couple of plugins from Flutter plugins, like package info and device info, sensors, and others, and forked them to new packages called plus packages, or plus plugins, what we call it. So, and then we extend and support all of these plugins. Let's say we support all of the platform for these plugins. So now if you go to plus.fluttercommunity.dev, here is the link. So then you can see all the amazing green checks for all the different platforms. So, and also we are null safe. So it's totally ready for you to go and start using these packages on your Flutter 2. And of course, I believe that community in general, so they're going to support different platforms, different plugins for all the platforms as well. Philippe?
I was going to say, I'm also happy that the community can use our plus plugins as a way of going and looking at how you do a plugin for Linux, how you do a plugin for Windows. Right, there's good examples on there as well.
Yeah,
sorry.
I just wanted to say, yeah, it's great that the community is taking stuff up. I think there's more effort from the Flutter team. Obviously, there's always not enough engineers to do this, but there's definitely effort to make the plugins that we do own as good as possible, as available as on many platforms as possible. There was this like huge, it's probably a year or a year and a half ago, right? That they published the syndication thing for plugins. So before it was like really hard to port to different places. Now it's like, adding a new target is not as hard. You can even not be on the team of the plugin to create that outlet for the plugin, right? For Windows or something like that. So that should hopefully be there. But yeah, it does mean to come back to the original question. It does mean that we'll need to it was way easier if you had only iOS and Android basically, and now you have all these other platforms, including cars. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm going to quickly answer one that I see in the chat that I can answer very quickly. What about gradient backgrounds on Elevate button? You can currently do that. It's called an ink widget. Go use the ink widget with a decoration and you'll get a gradient background. There you go. So there's no speciality needed. It's all built in. The ink widget. There you go.
And
Speaking of
I'm sorry. Some people are making a list of the questions. So if your question's not answered right away, you don't have to ask it 10,000 times. Okay. Yeah. Don't spam it, because we do have other people that you don't see and they're putting these questions into a spreadsheet.
Yes. So
thank you, Nawal Alamwi and Tomek.
So there was a question actually, and I've lost it totally. But it was asked about can we do hot reload over Wi-Fi? And I wonder if that's an interesting one to. I know this is. I mean, I guess
what do you think they mean by that, Simon?
Well, I mean, like imagine you've got we've had ADB over Wi-Fi, right? So you can already do that. So I suppose that's how you. I mean, in the olden days, if you had a hot reload, that should still work over. It's still a network connection. Should still work. I would suggest they go look up ADB Wi-Fi. It's you can turn your Android debug bridge onto Wi-Fi mode, and then you should be able to hot reload over to your device. I was doing it with a watch not too long ago with an Android watch, and it was working. So it should work. Yeah.
Can I ask one question from Twitter?
Go for it.
So actually it's for Philippe, and I know that yesterday you also had a talk regarding design and the relation with development. So this person asked, like, do you know if there is any work or project or progress for different design languages other than Material and Kubernetes? Look like Window or Ubuntu UI or things like that.
Yeah. So we already know. Well, okay. So the Flutter team itself, right, and Google itself is really interested in making sure that Material and Cupertino is working. Cupertino is the iOS style or macOS style as well, I guess. The Material is Material, but as you might know, Material is going more and more towards the kind of the theming paradigm where it shouldn't all look the same. It kind of started like that, to be honest, but now it's like more about, oh, yes, we have the ink effect, and there are some things that you get for free, but generally speaking, you want to make it your own. So that's one. And two, then Canonical is working on their own. I just forgot the name of their design language, but they are working on it, and they will make it available for developers for Ubuntu, and others I don't know. And I think it's one of those things where I hope that, again, the community kind of comes up with things. I've seen things like, Windows 95 theme, which is always fun. I know that there are others, but I'm not sure if there are any as comprehensive as, for example, Material or Cupertino. I really hope there will, but not from the Flutter team. Flutter team will only focus on Material, as far as I know, and Cupertino.
So the Yaru plugin listed below, that's the one for Ubuntu themed buttons. And the other one that we didn't mention, this is not an official package, is Fluent UI, which replicates the Windows interface look and feel. So both of those are available, and I'll put them in the chat for everyone.
So we can look forward to a lot more guidelines because we have, well, a lot more platforms.
Yeah.
Yes.
Although, again, like for example, the Material team really tries to have their thing. That was basically the reason Material started, right? Like, it should look good on all these platforms, including desktop. So of course, like, same with the Cupertino stuff. Like, you sometimes want to have it as close to the native look and feel as possible, so that people aren't thrown off. But like most of your app probably. We're focusing on apps that are kind of designed and that have their own brand or feeling, and that you can do. You probably shouldn't just use the usual Windows stuff.
I am actually really interested for the mention that was yesterday, which was for the multiple window support for desktop. I think that's really going to make a big difference to the way people approach Flutter apps, for sure.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. Go on, Scott.
Oh, no, I was going to say there's another question here. Can we set minimum height and width fixed in Windows or web to avoid an overflow issue? That's not how you really avoid an overflow issue.
Do you mean the minimum size of the window, I guess? Is that what they mean? So you can resize the window and it stops at a minimum size?
Right, I suppose, but go ahead.
I would say there was a package, and I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, that added extra API calls so that you could actually set the Microsoft Windows minimum size for the window.
Right. But not on the web, right? Like, you can't force the browser to.
Oh, did they ask web? Sorry, I thought it's desktop.
Yeah, it says fixed in Windows or web to avoid overflow issue. I'm trying to think.
The way that I've done that in the past, we did that actually. We did that on Hack 20 website, and that was just using the overflow box. Mm-hmm. So the overflow box allows it to overflow past the minimum constraints. You set the minimum constraints in the overflow box, and then when it gets smaller, it will just clip, and then it gives you a line parameter, so you can either say, move the content to the center or keep it in the top left or something like that. But yeah, overflow box is.
Also, it can be kind of fun to use expandeds in a column along with perhaps a fitted box, and grab the corner of your window and shrink it down to about 10 pixels by 10 pixels. and then you have no overflow.
Yeah,
You can't
everything
read
can be sized
anything,
about 1
but
pixel
there's
in
no
height.
overflow.
I just want to say I was recently reminded. I'll put it here in the chat, in the internal chat, I guess, about this. This is a community article by. Let me find the name.
It's probably Simon is one of them.
Yes, Simon was definitely yes.
I was involved in it a little bit.
Yes.
I was involved a little bit. It's Marcus? No, Marcus?
Yes, Marcelo Glassberg.
Yes.
And it's fantastic. I read it recently again, and if you have any overflow things, this is a great way to go. It's like it has like 23 examples, and it starts with very simple. It mixes in examples where you think you know it, but you don't. And then by going through that list, in the end, you will have a lot more understanding of like how the Flutter layout algorithm works.
The big thing is that it explains like in human readable words under each different layout exactly how it lays it out, which I like a conversation almost, which I think is really helpful. For certain.
Yes.
I've been saying that what's in the picture. She did the thumbnail for the article. It's constraints go down, sizes go up, positions are set by parents, and that's kind of like the mantra that I've been saying for like 3 years.
That does take a little explaining though for beginners. And the short version is the sizes you're allowed to be, the maximum and minimum, are passed down through all the widgets. The sizes that the widgets want to be are passed up, and the widget above, anyway, the parent determines where the one inside of it is aligned. So constraints go down, sizes go up, the parent places it.
The best example is like the center widget for that one, right? So like, you might have this much size, but then you're centering a small object in the middle. It's the one on the outside that determines where to position the child in the center based on its size.
Yes. So may I go for another question for Flip? So we've seen embedded Flutter on, let's say we've seen Flutter on embedded devices yesterday, like Toyota cars or BMW previously, and many more, I bet it will come. So one people just ask when Flutter will be ready for Google TV, or maybe creating apps for TVs, consoles, or things like that.
Yeah, I don't know that, and even if I did, I probably wouldn't be able to tell. But I'll say I'll say this. Kind of, I know this will be fluffy, but the embedding Flutter is actually pretty easy. You can find an article by Chinmay, who's one of the people on the team, who walks you through adding basically from scratch an embedder for Raspberry Pi for Flutter that is not fully functional, but like it could work for at least some point of sales thing or something like that. Possibly.
The article link is in the live chat for everyone.
Huh? Oh yes. And so it's not like easy, but it's not that bad. So I think if any like TV company, for example, is motivated enough to bring Flutter to their ecosystem, I think it's way easier, for example, than to bring in like the web. A browser, especially in terms of performance and resources needed. So I don't know when that will happen, but like looking at, for example, Toyota or Microsoft, and how they are, starting to get inspired and interested in getting Flutter in their ecosystems. I hope that it will be soon. And I have if I had the time, my project would be to take Chinmay's article and add something on Raspberry Pi and just have something running here. With Flutter.
I've had a long-term project that I've been wanting to do, and that is to output to sort of give away an image that they just put on an SD card. That if you boot it up on your HDMI output of your Raspberry Pi, you see like the IP address with the Flutter attach, right? And then you can just connect up and start hot reloading onto without any sort of configuring or doing any Linux stuff, just run it and you're good to go. And it's perfectly possible. I think it'd be really good.
I love it.
Very cool. Well,
I just want to mention that's the package that I couldn't remember. Desktop window. That's the one that sets the minimum and maximum sizes.
And it's kind of interesting. A gentleman who knows a bit about that. In fact, we have a couple other people possibly to come on this stream. I think.
Yes, I think
if they're ready.
John, do I have a John here? Hey, John.
I'm here.
Yeah, how's it going? The guy who knows about the Windows.
Hello, John.
And
a little bit.
Andre, how's it going?
Hi, Andre.
Hey, how's it going?
Sorry, surprised you there for a second.
Yeah.
So Microsoft. Do you want to introduce yourselves, John?
Sure. Yeah. So I think some folks might know me. John Weezy. I'm a architect at Microsoft, and I've been kind of in the background doing Flutter for about 3.5, almost 4 years now, and been doing a bunch of things and helped with recruiting and bringing in Andre, and let Andre introduce himself.
Hi everyone. I'm Andre Diacono. I'm a software developer, Flutter developer on the Surface Duo developer experience team. To give you an idea, our team works on the tools that the developers will use to enhance their apps for the Surface Duo and dual screen experience. So that's why I'm here today, to talk to you about that in terms of Flutter support.
Very cool. One thing I want to point out, it might cause a lot of people to think, but yes, they have Flutter developers at Microsoft.
Yeah, we actually have quite a few Android developers. I don't know what the exact number is these days, but it's in the many thousands of developers here at Microsoft across the company that develop for Android, and some of them are either already exploring or have begun doing work in Flutter. I was one of the early ones, and that's what got us to this point.
Yeah, the last event that I participated in that was focused on Android was actually internal to Microsoft, and it was the biggest Android event that I ever participated in, which was surprising.
Wow.
Yeah, we host a internal Android Dev Days twice a year, I think is what we're up to. We were yearly. I think we're twice a year now. Typically done in each remote region, so different regions would have their own. But this time with COVID and all the fun restrictions, we decided to do a single virtual 24-hour event, and hosted it from I think it was about 9 a.m. or 11 a.m. Pacific time. One day through the same time the next day, just kind of transitioning through time zones with different speakers in the different locations that we have around the world.
And that's tough.
Yeah.
That's really tough.
Yeah, it was fun.
So you all have been working in cooperation with the Flutter team. Could you guys and Philip tell us what that's been like?
Yeah, I can start maybe with, I'll just give a quick how we got to there, and then Andre can kind of fill in where he picked up and has been working on it. But probably, it's been a while. We announced Duo almost a year and a half ago now, and at that point, I had reached out to some of the folks that I know internally to find out what their plans were as far as evangelizing the platform out to developers, and then also what their plans were to support Flutter as one of the key development platforms. And that kind of led to me being a kind of a side job working with the developer experience team that Andre's on to begin working on seeing how much support Flutter had already and could run on Duo. And then about, what was it, Andre, maybe about October of last year was when we hired you on. And we kind of sat down and went through kind of my list of things that I had been telling them I thought we should be focusing on. And he brought his list together, and they were amazingly pretty much similar in what we thought needed to be done. And then round about, I would say it was early December, I had a discussion with Tim Sneath and kind of presented Andre's work as something we wanted to collaborate with Google on. And Tim was all for it and mentioned to me that he thought a great place, if we could target it to announce it, would be the event that they were planning for. At the time, it was early March. We didn't have a date or even a name. So we kind of talked internally and said, yeah, that'd be great, and connected Andre's boss, Guy, with Tim, and they had a discussion and kind of rolled from there. And then I'll turn it over to Andre to talk about his experience since then with working with the Google team.
So initially, we thought we were fortunate to have this door open for us to collaborate directly with the Flutter team. But after actually working with them, we understood actually how open Flutter is. I mean, that's already kind of known. Everything is done in the open. You can hardly have a March event with any surprise if everyone can actually look at the PRs. But yeah, the Flutter team is a joy to work with. Everything was super natural, and we mostly collaborated on a kind of a request for comments doc, which you can find all over the place in the Flutter .dev website. So yeah, Flutter is easy to work with, both in terms of the team behind it and the framework itself, and of course the developer facing, which is just a framework, let's say.
Cool.
So yeah, it was amazing thus far.
I'd like to hear from your viewpoint. I'd like to hear what you've actually been working on in terms of what features have you been adding to Flutter.
Well, if you don't mind, I have a few slides that I could share.
Share your screen.
Yep, just a second. Okay, here we go.
There we go.
Yeah, I'll start by.
I tell you what. How about? Do you want us? We'll take a step back and we'll leave you and John on the screen to present. Run your presentation? How's that?
Sure. That's great. Thank you.
See you in a minute.
Okay, so let's start with a recap of what we learned yesterday from the keynote. First, I always like to show an agenda of what you're about to see. So we're going to discuss these new form factors. Foldables are not particularly new in my mind because I've been working for some time on them. But I think, generally speaking, the mobile developers are already quite familiar with them. We still consider them new form factors because we're just adding support now to Flutter. And yeah, anyway, so we'll discuss the new form factors. I'll explain a bit what are display features. I'll present some new design patterns that are enabled by the dual screen form factor. And then I'll explain what the two-pane widget does. So this is a very in-depth view of everything that's coming in terms of Flutter foldable support in Flutter. So in the last year, we've seen new device form factors emerge, the foldable and dual screen devices. We're Microsoft, so of course the dual screen is our main focus. But as you'll see in this presentation, the support that we add in Flutter is for both Surface Duo and other devices like the Galaxy Fold. So the Duo adapts to you when creating content, when playing a game, when watching a video, when typing, or when you're just browsing the web. For us, the Flutter developers, it means new scenarios that we can take advantage of. Your application is no longer using just one screen. It can use 2 screens. My video here is a bit choppy, I think. But this is a very good example of an email client. So this is Outlook. It works really well on 2 screens. So as I said, I'll briefly explain what the display feature is, because this is the foundation on which the foldable sport is built on. So display features have been first introduced in Android. They are called display features on Android. We kept the naming for Flutter just to avoid any confusions. Right now, there are 3 types of display features: the hinge, fold, and cutouts. The hinge is, first I would need to explain how Flutter sees a device with a hinge. How it sees a device with a fold or with a cutout, I think it's a bit more clear. For a device with a fold, the screen is continuous, so you see the Flutter view is the whole canvas of the phone, so the whole screen. This is true for the dual screen device as well. The hinge in the middle, which is actually, it doesn't exist as a hardware display, it's just the hinge there. It does exist in software, so you do see it as available screen, but you will never be able to render in that place. So this is why you need to interrogate media query. There have been a few properties added to it for you to be able to adapt just to these new form factors. You can get a list of display features from media query just by asking media query of your context.display features. This returns a list. Each item in the list has a bounds, a type, and a state. The bounds is just a rectangle, the rectangle area from the screen that is occupied by the hinge. So for the hinge or the fold or the cutout is the same. For the dual screen device, this rectangle will be exactly in the middle of the screen. So you can expect it to have something like left 720 or something like that, and top 0. Just to imagine how the rectangle is positioned. The state is something that you can use to determine how the foldable device is it open, or is it, so this is I think I have examples of this. No, I don't have, but this is called flat posture. This is half opened, so kind of like a laptop, and this is flipped, so you can call it a tent maybe or something like that. But you can get the state from the display feature itself. A device can have multiple display features at the same time, theoretically. I don't know of a device which has all of them. I think this is Samsung Flip has a cutout, and it also has a fold. So to give you an idea what you're working with. Because the list is complicated to work with, and because you don't need to access cutouts and folds as often as you would need to access hinges, we also added hinge as a direct way to access just the hinge. The reason we felt that this is needed is because while all these are display features, they're not all as let's say they're not all as usable. So the cutout display feature, you end up dealing with that by using a safe area. So you already use that in your app. There's no real big reason to stop using that and start using this. This is not what this is for. Maybe you want to do something around that rectangle. That is what this is for. But that's a very specific use case. For the hinge, You'll need, if you actually, so if you want to provide an experience for a dual screen display, you will end up using the hinge a lot. So this is why we extracted it in a separate property. I'll stop for just a second to see if there are any questions. I have prepared 2 or 3 demos along the way, so just not to cram all the demos at the end, just to make this more like enjoyable, take a break from the presentation itself. So I'll jump into the emulator. First of all, this is the Surface Duo emulator. You can find it on our website and on our blog and everywhere. It's linked everywhere. You'll have a link at the end of this at the end of this presentation. So yeah, I closed Android Studio because it was a resource hog, but let me open it back up. Yeah, it opens straight into the project, which is great. Let me enter presentation mode. Okay, so the first demo that I want to show you, I think this is a more complicated way of presenting it. This is a more simple way. It's a more simple way of viewing it. So first, let's just have a stack which has children populated according to where the display features are, and just create a container. This code is missing a positioned widget, but I think I trimmed it too much. So let's see how this looks. First, well, this is the actual. Oh, just a sec. They do say something about demos, right? They know that they never go the way you want them to go. Let me see if it. Okay, so it's going to run now. And nothing spectacular happens because when the device, when your app is occupying just one of the screens, you will not see any display features reported. But when you span your app, and I'll just switch over to the code real quick to highlight the fact that I'm creating a container with a box decoration that has a border, that's a blue border, and the interior of the container is orange. And I'll just show you what's behind the hinge for a second. So this demo shows us where the hinge is. It's a bit, yeah, maybe it's not the best demo, but I'll work on that. I hope you get the picture. I'll switch over to my second demo regarding the media query data, which is a lot simpler. I'm just looking at the hinge. Is the hinge null? If it's null, then I'm just going to display no hinge. If it's not null, then I'll display the width of it. And this is how it looks. So the hinge is 36.6 points. This is in logical pixels, by the way. So that's why you should expect non-integer values. And if you unspan the app, you will see there is no hinge. By the way, if you're looking at this and you're maybe worried about how your app looks on the Surface Duo, you don't need to worry. By default, apps open up on one screen. We would love it if your app would take advantage of the full dual screen experience, but until that happens, your app will work just fine. Let me switch over to the presentation again. So that was demo 1. This is the second demo. As I said, you can download the emulator at aka.ms/. Flutter foldable. This takes you to the blog article, which presents everything I'm showing you in depth, and also links to the emulator. Let's discuss a bit what the dual screen form factor enables for your application. So what I have here are 5 design patterns we've encountered so far when working with 2 screens. The first one, extended canvas, you can view that as an experience for Google Maps or Bing Maps. So the hinge doesn't really bother you because you can move the map around, and whatever was behind the hinge can be on one screen or the other. For this detail, you can imagine this as the Outlook experience that I showed you before. You have emails on the left and you have open emails on the right, which you can read while browsing. The 2-page is the simplest one to imagine. It's like you're reading a book. You have the same kind of content. It's just the previous page is on the left, the next page is on the right. Dual view, you can see this as a restaurant list on the left and a map of the city with the restaurants on the right. So it's a way of viewing the same thing in 2 different ways that's useful to you. The last one on our list is the companion pane, and you can view this as a tool for some piece of content. So a photo editing app would be perfect to be enhanced in this way. So you have the photo on the left, and then you have filters on the right and all kinds of sliders. You might be wondering, okay, so this is nice. These are nice design patterns. I like them. I certainly do. How do I build this experience? And we have a very simple widget that does a lot of good things for this form factor and a lot of good things for your app in a desktop, a web, or a tablet environment. The images at the bottom in this slide are produced by the same piece of code. So 2pane is meant as a way to scale up your design, not only for dual screen devices, but also for tablets and desktop as well. This layout has 2 child widgets, which can be shown side by side, above or below, or a single widget can be prioritized, as you see on the image in the middle. The relative size of the 2 widgets can be adjusted proportionally. And on dual screen devices, the boundary between them snaps to the hinge area. So all these, these 3 images are produced by the same code. What I put at the top is just a very simplified signature of the widget constructor. So you can give it 2 panes. You need to give it 2 panes. They are both required, actually. You can give it a pane proportion. If you don't, it's just gonna split them in half. And you can give them pane priority. If you don't, they will both be displayed by default. So here's the actual code that produces these images. The widget construction for pane 1 and pane 2 is really not important here. The pane proportion is 0.3, and you can see this in the tablet or desktop render, the 3rd image. And the pane priority is a bit of logic that says if the display is wide enough, I want to have both. If the display is not wide enough, then I just want to have pane number 1. And the logic that you want to put here is your own. Maybe you want to show pane 2 if something is selected from a list or something along those lines. Let's jump into demo 3. The demo 3 is exactly what you just saw on screen. So I'm gonna uncomment this, and yeah, my cursor just disappeared. That's why I'm a bit confused. But my mouse cursor. We'll make it happen without it. What I want to show you in this demo is how this behaves. So I really need my mouse cursor now. So PowerPoint, give me my mouse cursor. Okay. Okay, so this is how the demo behaves on two screens. This is, yeah, on one screen, I think I didn't go wide enough for the, yeah. I just threw this together. I think I should have spent a bit more time on this. But the screens on the screens on the Surface Duo are quite wide. There we go. So this now works how we wanted it to work. What I wanted to show is how this behaves when the device is rotated in double landscape, because this is how this is called. This is double landscape, and the other one is double portrait. Landscape and portrait still exist. It's when you just use one of the screens. You can fold the device and just use one of them. Yeah, and just to show you how this was, yeah, this is how this would look on a tablet, for example, or your desktop environment. I, for one, am very excited to see what you'll build with this. And not only that, but I'm very excited to see what you have to say about the components themselves. So everything you're seeing here is still in an open PR. It's not yet merged into master in Flutter. So we did that to wait for you to give us feedback. I'll quickly just mention a few other things. So before I wrap up, I want to show you some of the things that happen without you changing anything in your code. For example, pop-up menus avoid the hinge on their own. This is the Flutter Gallery app, and this is the demo that it has for menus. Now, normally the menu would show up over here, but it now avoids the hinge. You don't need to do anything. That's just something that the framework does for you. And it's the same with dialogues. So dialogues normally show on the middle of the screen, and you don't want them overlapping the hinge. They wouldn't be usable. So now they just default on the left screen. If you want them to go on the right screen, you just need to add another parameter to show dialogue. It's called screen. It's by default 0. If you want to make the dialogue go on the right screen, you give it a value of 1. And if you have a more sophisticated pop-up route, there's a very complicatedly named widget, which is hinge avoiding modal wrapper. I'm still thinking of renaming this, but you just add this at the top of your pop-up route, and it will behave like this. So to recap, Media Query now has display features, and Hinge has new properties. There's a new widget called ToPane. Dialogues work out of the box, and they also work how you want them to work if you add a new parameter. And most importantly for us, this is the most important thing for us, is that the PRs are still open, and we want you to give us feedback. It doesn't need to be good feedback. It doesn't need to be, just go in there, tell us what you think, and we want to build this together with you, out in the open, Flutter style, let's say. So thanks a lot. That's been my bit, let's say.
Thanks, Andre. Hey, maybe you can comment quickly on, what is the roadmap as far as when do you think we're going to be merging this into at least the beta branch? or dev, or where is it going to land and when, so that folks can actually start playing with it, directly in Flutter, as opposed to maybe copying down your repo and using it there.
Okay. So first, if you want to try this out right now, so if you want to play with it right now, you have to go through a bit painful process of running your own version of the engine, because this goes through the C++ engine, and this is all highlighted in the docs. So we also have a page, docs page specifically for everything that you've seen now. So we'll.
What is the address for the docs page?
If you follow the one URL that I'm promoting today, you'll end up on that page. So it's aka.ms/flutter-foldable.
I missed the dash. That's what it was. Okay, I'll make sure that's up on the stream and everyone can get access to that. There you go.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, flutter-foldable. Okay, so if you want to go through that, I'll personally help you. Just let me know. You'll get in touch with me, I'm sure. If you're the kind of person that wants to do that, I'm sure you'll find me. The steps are highlighted on that docs page anyway, so you'll find it easy, I hope.
I'm gonna suggest something. I'm not gonna put you in it. I'm just gonna suggest something. It might be good to provide some pre-made engine binaries, just so that people can try it out and feedback. Because there's definitely an audience of Flutter developers that are not going to be willing to touch the engine, and there's very few that it's a very much smaller, narrower aspect of developers that are willing to build the engine like myself. So if you want to get some really good feedback from them, I just recommend maybe just dropping the engine binaries in GitHub releases or somewhere where they can download and just put them in the right folder to run them with the local engine.
Yeah.
Flutter tool local engine.
Yeah, because the other one would be me.
Okay. Okay, so that's actually very good feedback. Thanks a lot. I'll make sure to get on that probably tomorrow. So that's a very good idea. We'll find a way to host them somewhere.
They could just like run it, right? And give you feedback immediately. Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just looking at YouTube chat, and I want to point out that Raf is a strange human being. Maybe we'll have him on stream soon.
So
I did want to ask one quick thing, Andre.
Go ahead.
I noticed that, and it's one of those little things. Portrait is normally a long ways up. John, you already see where this is going. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Double
and take
landscape versus double portrait. Yeah, when it's flipped. Well, if it's not rotated, then it is double portrait.
Well, it becomes counterintuitive because if it's single, it's one way, but if it's
right. So you're saying when the device is in landscape, you got double portrait, and when the device is in portrait, you got double landscape.
Well, not if you want to get spanned this way, then it's a portrait, because it's actually portrait size, right? It's the size of the window that you're getting versus
right. So that's what I'm thinking is that looks like portrait, but it's actually double landscape.
Yeah, when it's
double landscape.
Yeah.
Unless you span both screens and then it's portrait, or is it still double landscape?
Actually,
double landscape.
I think that the framework media query will detect that as portrait because the media size is what
it does, and that's what you get back when you do a media query orientation. You get portrait back if it's spanned when you have it rotated. So,
and now I do want to point out, you don't have to worry about this. You can write an app the way you're accustomed to. It will only show on one screen. Okay, so you don't have to write conditionals to look for if you're portrait or landscape or double portrait or spanned across both in portrait or spanned across both in landscape. Now, if you want to, have at.
Well, so I say sort of, because your apps that you have built today will run just fine, either on single screen or spanned. What you lose in Spanned is that the hinge is there, right? On a Duo, the hinge is there and your stuff will be behind it. And that's where the work that we're doing is to help you be able to turn your page into something that knows about the hinge and avoids the hinge when you want it to, versus if you don't.
Something that I find it was quite interesting, the 2-pane widget. So what you've got there with a 2-pane widget means that you can set up a fixed proportion. So when it's not running in a foldable device Spanned, it can be a fixed proportion like 25, 75 or whatever. And then when you run it on when you span it across both screens on a Duo, for example, it moves the point to the center where the hinge is and sort of doesn't cover the hinge. So you kind of get two-pane view.
Yes, and that's it. From a API design point, that was a bit weird to design, because normally you tell the 2-pane, look, I want 30% and 70%, but then it is very well documented that in some scenarios it just decides to do 50-50, if that's how the device looks like, right? But that's why you use that's why you would use 2-pane, just to make sure the hinge is the boundary that you want there.
Yeah, I like the idea, because quite a few apps are designed for tablet, right? And when they're designed for tablet for that sort of wide sort of landscape view, they normally do the 2-pane kind of view, and be able to just to wrap that in 2-pane, and then that automatically, you expand it on a foldable, it snaps the hinge and works it for you. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and it's probably worth noting too, the 2-pane control has been around for a while. We've had it in development on the Xamarin side of the house and the native side of the house for quite a while, and that's where we started from. That's where Andre kind of took the inspiration from that existing control and the way that it's been set up, because it's been through a lot of that iteration on how it should work and that. So it was a good one to start from and follow.
I actually have something nice to show you if you want to share my screen again. This is something that maybe wasn't super obvious, or maybe I need to reiterate over it, but Flutter Gallery, the app that I always use to show people they can't tell the difference between native and Flutter. So this was adapted by me to show you like this is the hero app, let's say, that we picked for this foldable implementation. So for example, here if I tap on one of the demo on one of the study apps, they open on the right screen. And if I want to look at one of the demos, normally this would let's say I'm gonna pick a dialog. So normally this doesn't show you the options. They're kind of hidden at the top. You have to click here and see the options and change. I want an alert, or something like that. But on a dual screen, this gets enhanced, and both screens are used, let's say.
I suppose there's a paradigm that people have to realize, right, in terms of you've now got two content visible, so now they need to think about, well, what can the user can click on those options right there and change the behavior and not have to flip between two screens. So
and it's not even two screens, right? I mean, it's if you've got a large 12-inch tablet or something, you could use the same 2-pane control like you were showing with the percentages and split it into two different things.
I'm right. This is still one big Flutter layout then, right? This is just one layout that covers two screens. And then it's the Flutter side that is getting rid of the hinge and making it feel like two screens.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's people ask that all the time. Like, what is Flutter app? What do you get back when the app is running on one screen versus two, as far as the size, the width and the height? And you get back whatever it's taking up. So if it's on the left-hand side or the right-hand side, you're going to get just the dimensions of that side. But if it's running Spanned to Flutter, you're going to get, if you do a media query and you grab the size and look at width and height, you're going to get the full width and the full height of the device, not just half of a screen.
Actually, that makes sense. So I suppose if you're dragging something from left-hand pane to the right-hand pane, you're dragging in one Flutter view just across the hinge, right? Yeah.
So there's an interesting question here. Go right ahead, Andre.
Yeah, something that John asked at the beginning of his first question, I didn't quite answer that. And Simon, you just touched on drag and drop now. For example, drag and drop doesn't really, I don't think it works yet on Flutter. From an exterior app, you have drag and drop mechanics inside the app, but you can't. Yeah, the exterior collaboration is.
I'm going to caveat that you can't. You can still do it. You can still do it if you build it yourself.
Yes. That's a great thing about Flutter. You can do that.
So you can do it.
Yeah.
But it's not provided for you out of the box. Yeah.
Yes. Well, that's on our roadmap. So we care about that mechanic and that user experience on Surface Duo, and we want that in Flutter. We want Flutter developers to develop for that kind of behavior. And yeah, we already discussed this. It's nothing, it's a bit murky. We just focused on the March event, so on the Engage event that was yesterday. But the future development would include drag and drop, possibly navigation, because navigation with two screens open at once kind of needs to be accounted for. So there are a lot of scenarios where we want to continue chipping in. So Microsoft is not done with this, and me in particular, I'm far from done with support for Flutter.
I think Andre and I had probably a good couple of hour-long conversation about navigation and going through all the different iterations.
I was just saying, me and you, John, we had a conversation about that one.
Yeah, we did a long time ago.
Suddenly, it very much goes out of control very quickly when you realize all the different combinations of problems that you can get into. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I see Scott, you threw up Mike's question down there. So Andre, do you want to look at that?
Sorry, I thought we were at a break point there.
No, go.
Before you get to questions, I just want to say, please ask your questions in the live chat. Please ask your questions in the live chat. We'll bring them up on stream if we can. Go for it.
So what happens to the non-prioritized pane on a normal phone? How do you access it on a phone? So the non-prioritized on a normal phone.
Yeah, so normally you got the two pane,
it's not there.
It's not there. It's just not, it doesn't exist. We don't create it.
It's just not there. Yeah. Yes.
I suppose there might be a time where
part of. Sorry,
is there a
it's
flag?
Not part of the layout.
So if it's not part of that, then I suppose you need there needs to be a flag that tells that the developer can use to know they should lay out differently, right?
Oh, you're saying so if you're using a two pane, right, and you've got pane 1 set to a list and pane 2 set to the detail, and you're on a phone, so you only see the one, is there a way for the developer to know that only the list is visible?
And then they know that they need to launch the second screen for the details or something like that. So I suppose you can do Hinge, right? If Hinge is no, if the media query Hinge said no Hinge.
So whatever logic you used to decide that you want pane priority to be pane 1, you had a bit of logic there. It's your job to propagate that downwards because you already calculated that, let's say. We considered adding access to a two-pane parent to do something like two-pane of context, tell me some details. But really that two-pane, that property is set by you. So I'm not going to intervene in how you manage your state management because that's just not the direction you want to go in. So for now, unless people in the PR start commenting about this and provide feedback, like basically Mike did now with his question. His question is also a piece of feedback for me. We can consider adding that, but for now, you're the one that calculated that property, so you already know that state. You should be the one propagating it to that child. I hope that answers the question.
So I must have missed that. So there's not just a proportion, but then you've got a flag that you want two pane or don't want two pane.
Yes, because you can tell it if I have less than 500 pixels width, I just want the first pane, and that's it.
Right.
And that's the property is called pane priority. So you calculated that property. That means that you already have it. It's in your control. The one writing the app. So
I've got a question I've actually got an open question here. So something that came up in conversation, I think me and Scott had about media query was media query. When you use it, it implicitly registers the widget for rebuilding when the media query changes. There might be a time that we want to get those values without registering for rebuild. Do you have is there a separate part of the API surface that allows you to go get that hinge value without having to go through media query?
Get that hinge value.
So the properties inside media query.
Yeah, the properties inside media query. You can get it through from the platform
UI
window dispatcher.
Yeah, the UI window. Yeah, the surface through that.
Yeah, because this behaves exactly like the size property. This follows the same mechanics. So normally on a phone, the size doesn't really change, right? But if you flip it, it changes. So you do care about that property and you want to react to it, right? It's the same with the hinge.
I think this is the case that most people, they could be developing a desktop app and still would be using similar sort of behaviors. And it's a case of a lot of people develop for a phone and then they say that's their primary use case, but then they don't think about all these other use cases about how it's sized and how things change. So I think my advice to most people is just develop on web or desktop first, and then you can change the window size and see how that behaves.
Okay, and also, Simon, we've probably got a lot of people who don't understand the mechanics of what we're talking about right now. So when we're dealing with media query, you're getting a lot of rebuilds, basically, and sometimes they're completely unnecessary. What's that?
Yeah, as I say, like for example, when you resize, if you register for media query, you get rebuilt on every time that changes, right? However, layout will already happen. So if you only need to register for rebuild, if your layout, your set of widgets changes. I won't go into the details anyway. Yeah.
Well, in short, if you're dragging the window open and making the area you're painting to larger, smaller, whatever, you need to redo layout, but you don't need to rebuild all your widgets. But if you're using media query, it is going to force a rebuild, but you don't need to. So that's what we're talking about right here, is how do you get around that? Because also you do need a media query in order to be aware of, well, where the hinge is and all. And one interesting thing, Andre, how would an orientation builder be a possible happy medium in this, or could that be used?
I have to ask, what is an orientation builder?
It detects when you swap the device.
Okay. Yep. Okay, so that's not an existing widget. You're asking how I would build that.
No, I think there is actually an orientation builder in the framework.
Yeah, so it's just a widget that will redraw whenever the orientation changes. So it's kind of orientation aware.
Rebuild.
Okay.
Rebuild, yeah.
Yeah, so it would behave the same way. This doesn't change it in any way. So, yeah. If does that rely on the actual size, just the size of the
media query? I think it relies on the media query, so it should probably work without any problems.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think we're ready to bring in some guests from the community. So let's introduce the one and only Randall. Hey, Randall.
Hey, hi.
How's it going?
Actually, I was just going to say that the Orientation Builder and Media Query both are not looking at whether it's actually portrait or landscape. Orientation Builder is sort of looking for the space that it's in. Layout Builder also the same way. So that means if you have you have something in landscape mode, but you've given it only a portrait size, as in greater height and width space, it will tell you you're portrait mode, even though you're not. That's not the way the device is set.
Yeah, I noticed that on Windows Desktop. If you start dragging the corner around and you make it taller than it is wide, it's going to put you in portrait. If you make it wider than it is tall, it flips your app, unless you lock the orientation and tell it don't do that.
I ran into that when I was looking at 10X when we first started talking about this, year and a half ago, and we're wondering if it would work on a 10X device.
Yeah.
So Raf's actually given us a question in the chat here. 2-pane looks great. What would be the strategy for ultra wide? Can you nest multiple 2-panes?
I answered him in the chat, but I think it would work because you're just going to nest a pane in a pane. So if you give it 30 and 70%, and then in the 70% you give another 2-pane control. It should just lay out, but you're gonna get into that kind of like window and a window and a window and a window sort of view, right?
I've got an idea. See, Raph, I thought you were at work during this time, but now that I know you're free, I want you to look into this and come back, be on the show next week, and explain to us how this works. And so you got a whole week to look into it.
I also
sorry, before you come in on that, we have another member of the community here with us, Martin. Hey, Martin,
hello.
Welcome. Do you want to introduce yourself, just so everyone knows who you are?
Yes, I'm Martin. I've been a Flutter developer since 2018. I work at a company in Austria. We make an app for medical personnel and doctors. It was a rewrite from 2 native Android and iOS apps. Now in Flutter, we launched at the end of last year.
Wow. Have you felt the reaction? Has anyone commented that it's a Flutter app, or have you just had really good feedback about the?
We didn't get really feedback because it's a Flutter app, because the users don't really notice.
That's what I mean. I'm just kind of curious if there's like any Flutter specific problems that anyone's had, or if it's just been flawlessly worked, no problems.
We got a lot of positive feedback because the new UI design is much nicer, because the other app was getting a little bit dated. Yeah, we also got a few comments about the iOS jank issue, but yeah.
And we also have an Ahmed with us. Hey, Ahmed. You're muted.
Hello, everyone.
Finally, somebody did it.
Yep.
There you go, bro. It was your turn this week.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm very excited for what happened yesterday. And I remembered 3 years ago when I started talking about Flutter, and this is the future. I was telling people 3 years ago, you will build one single code-based Flutter application and you will get 6 different apps. Guess what? It's not only 6 applications only. Flutter is a platform agnostic. What does it mean? It means any kind of technology, any company want to use Flutter, they can easily use the engine, the Flutter engine, and wrap it with the embedder API with their internal development tools. Exactly the same happened with Toyota project. I was very, very excited with what happened with them. It's not only Toyota, it's Suzuki and Mazda also are in the same project. It's automotive grade Linux project, which focus on automotive industry. Guess what? You are talking about millions of cars that using this operating system and embedded system with Flutter. And I saw some people use TypeScript to write Flutter widgets. They wrap the Flutter framework itself in TypeScript. And this is a Chinese project. It's called Mix Flutter. I'll send the project here in the chat.
I know it sounds cringy to me.
Yeah.
iframes. Let's have a whole page of iframes with Flutter widgets using TypeScript.
Yeah. Actually, with Flutter, there is no limit for your imagination. And the good thing, Flutter team are focusing on the tools and the developer experience at the same time. They are investing effort and investing time to make us as a developers happiness, and can easily find issues in our code like Flutter Fix and Flutter Fix, Dart Migrate, and all other command line tools. Actually, from yesterday, I'm feeling, oh my God, what's going on? And I still feel this is what exactly I was aiming to.
I want to share something actually. And I want to get everyone's, especially Randall and Martin, I want to get your opinion about Flutter Engage as well. Lara Martin put this together. Yes. This is a wonderful image of all of the different things that we heard about yesterday. Lara Martin is also a Flutterista and Flutter community member. And she drew this up, I think, as the event was happening. So we've got a few different things we could chat about here. Anyone want to take anything? Martin, what was your favorite feature?
Yeah, of course, I think null safety is a big thing. It makes so much easier, and and I can't I probably spent hundreds of hours debugging null pointer exceptions, and now this is all gone once the migration is done. So yeah, that's great.
I did actually have a conversation on one of the Slacks recently with someone, and it was about the fact that there's the required keyword, right? So in null safety, before null safety we had @required, which was just an annotation to say this field should be required, and the compiler would error if you didn't have that. And now we have the required keyword, which does the same thing as a replacement. However, if the field can't be null, then we shouldn't really have a required keyword on a name parameter. And sadly, it still is the case that we need that. And I feel like it's pretty good that we have that still for sort of trying to maintain backwards compatibility and trying to migrate people over. But I think eventually I'd like to see the Dart language team remove the required keyword. I don't think it's required at all anymore as part of the language. We'll see how it goes, though.
Yeah, I agree. It's like, I mean, the compiler tells you, hey, you need to type required here, otherwise it's an error. And it's like, yeah, I mean, if it's required, you could figure it out. So,
Randall, what was the thing that really jumped out at you?
I'm amazed at how much better the IDE quick fixes and stuff are. I'm also amazed at the Migrate tool, how much work it can do for you to really get you into the new mode, the 2.12 mode. It's because you can just say apply the changes, and it just sort of goes out and actually edits your files. It even edits the pub spec to change it to minimum API as 2.12, which is like, okay, that's one more thing I don't have to remember when I'm migrating. So that was pretty cool. I thought that was really fancy. I think the home team should extract some of that and make it frameworks we can use for other things, because that's a lot of cool work going on there.
Do you think they could maybe by next year get that to do our web SEO?
Oh, wouldn't that be fun? Wouldn't that be fun? Yeah, I did want to bring up something that when we were talking about layouts and constraints and stuff, and Philippe provided that URL that we put up on the screen. One of the things I didn't hear anybody mention, which was sort of surprising, is that the dev tools now have been improving over and over again about the layout explorer. It used to be
versions,
rows.
Oh, there's so much in dev tools.
Yeah, the dev tools, you can just click on any of your things and you can see exactly what's constraining and what's freeing in your particular layout. But here's the thing: it's still missing. Maybe they're listening and they can fix this. If you end up saying, this should be, I'll put an issue in. Don't worry. You can say make this a flex one, make this a full spread column, whatever. But you have to go back and manually type those things back into your code. I
remember what worked.
Knows what's changed. Why doesn't it apply it the same way the fix tool does? That would be cool.
Yeah, you got to remember what worked when you made your changes, and then go back and actually put them in your code.
Yeah.
Ahmed, I know you mentioned a lot just then, but I'm assuming that the multiple different platforms was your favorite point.
Yes, and also like Andrea said, Flutter is an open source project. Everything is public, and you can see the pull requests and know what's going on. But as a most exciting point for me was the Embedder and AGL project, because 4 or 5 years ago I was planning for automotive application to control the car, and
I was just going to say that.
Yeah. At that time, the technology wasn't helped me to do that. When I found now AGL integration, which automotive grade Linux project integration with the Embedder API with Flutter, like Toyota did, I am very, very happy to see that happen. Also, I want to thank Andrea and John for their effort for supporting the new screens and new Hinge features. Really, I can't say specific feature, but this is the top one. And the other things I was waiting, it was a matter of time, and it just happened yesterday.
I wanted to point one other thing out real quick. People don't know about you now. Ahmed is like my oldest friend in Flutter. He was the first one to show up and help me out here with doing stuff. And also, this entire time, he's loved Flutter. He's gone all over the Middle East talking about Flutter. And I mean, multiple countries. He drove what was called the Flutter bus all over talking about Flutter because he loves Flutter. But professionally, he was working on software for cars and couldn't do it in Flutter. And now, finally, after 3 years, you're going to be able to take the two things and do them together. So you're going to finally be able to get to use Flutter in your work, bro.
I want to point out, if anyone wants
Yazid, I met Yazid 2 years ago in Saudi Arabia. He was 14 years old, which Chris notified him in his post. Also, there is Karim from Egypt, it's the same age. I met 2 developers 10 years old in Saudi Arabia also. I met a lot of developers. If someone give me this opportunity 25 years ago, I am 40 years old now. But if someone met me when I was 15 or 14 years old and guided me and told me do that and that and that, I can't imagine what could happen now. But I'm very, very happy that the community growed and a lot of new developers now joining the Flutter community, especially the Middle East community, because we started the first Flutter community all over the world. It was Flutter Egypt community at 2017. And now a lot of people from the Middle East able to get jobs and spend money on their family and working for remote companies in America or Europe or other countries. Actually, I'm little bit I'm more excited since yesterday. I started remember what was going on with me. I traveled for 7 or 8 countries. I trained more than 20,000 developer in face, more than 3,000 workshop developers in workshop, face-to-face training people and telling people about Flutter. And now everyone happy with what's Flutter.
Well,
all of this is thanks to you, right?
Oh, I know. And the thing is when I go and teach a workshop or something like that, I get one email address for every 15 people in the crowd. And you don't understand. Ahmed, last time I checked, had over 6,000 email addresses. Okay, so imagine how many people have been in his audiences. And not to change a subject, but I have to try to save a situation here. Okay, Ahmed is my oldest friend in Flutter, but Nilay, you're my favorite friend in Flutter. Okay, Nilay, my buddy, I will buy you lots of bubble tea. I promise.
I was going to mention, we're talking about embedded, and I put a link down the very bottom of the screen there, and I put in the chat. Flutter Pi is a project. So if you have a Raspberry Pi 4, you can go run Flutter on your Raspberry Pi just by using that pre-made Flutter engine and everything that they have. So check that out.
Exactly.
So, does anyone want to talk about any of the other topics that were brought up during the chat, or we'll see if we can get some questions in the live chat for everyone?
Questions?
Yeah, actually, one thing that nobody mentioned yet was like the meta-programming announcement.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's gonna solve so much like friction, because I mean now like running build runner for generating like a to JSON or from JSON, so it's okay, it works, but yeah, you have to. It's a separate tool, and yeah, it's slow, and I think it's gonna be much better.
There is actually, I mean, this is just SEO. Well, that's not really a question, but I do want to talk about this. So myself and Scott were investigating SEO with Flutter, Flutter Web, not too long ago. The idea that SEO is any different to any of the other client-side frameworks is immaterial, right? The SEO is the wrong. It's just such an encompassing whole search engine optimization. It stands for, if everyone doesn't know, and it encompasses so much, right? So you can't just say, does it support SEO? I mean, yes, it already does. You can do whatever you want to optimize it.
Well, just as much as Vue.js does.
Exactly.
I mean, it compiles to JavaScript.
So the problem here is that when the search engine requests your search result, it requests the HTML for your page and the JavaScript. Previously, they would Google and other companies would say, we don't run your JavaScript, right? So that you had to have the HTML with all of your tags and content and everything in. And then they found that people were then running JavaScript to hide that content to show other content. So they get listed for one thing, but show a different thing on the screen. So now they do execute the JavaScript. So this becomes a non-issue. You have a certain amount of time to build your page in React. And this is all already listed. There's so much information online about this. You don't have to, you can already do SEO with Flutter. And if you're trying to return back different meta tags, that's your header tags for each page, then that's something you do server side. That's nothing to do with Flutter, right?
Right.
So you would have each different URL return a different HTML page with different meta HTML tags in it. But yeah, it's perfectly possible.
Well, one other really important point with SEO, your page load time is huge. Now, Simon, if you remember that test page that we looked at, the original test page got a horrible SEO rating. And it was because it was taking over 6 seconds to load. And what was it, 85 or 95% of the JavaScript it claimed wasn't being used?
Yeah.
And it was just because it was judging the first page, but it had downloaded all of the JavaScript for the entire website because it was it was all done as one Flutter app. So Ahmed, I see your head going up and down and up and down. You and Simon together, maybe. How do we fix this?
Well, deferred imports is the go-to recommendation. So deferred imports, you basically, I think it's the keyword is deferred, and you put before or after the word import. I can't remember. It's on the Dart documentation, and it basically means that you can then choose when to load more Dart modules independently, and each one is compiled as a separate JavaScript file, so that when your initial page loads, you only have to load the required JavaScript for that page to load, not everything within the entire website. So you get to break down your app into as many modules and however you want to organize it.
One other thing to keep in mind is that you do have access to Dart HTML if you're running with a target of JavaScript.
Yep.
Which would give you the ability to add meta tags directly in your main subroutine. Your main routine. You could actually go in and patch up your DOM right from there.
Actually, I was reading the comments, and my opinion about SEO, is it a big problem? The answer is no. It's very easy, but it needs some time because we can divide it to 3 parts. The first part, it's called SEO, search engine optimization. What does it mean? It means we need the search engine to understand the page content to be able to archive it and search inside it. So you have something called social cards. Social cards like Twitter or Facebook or any social media have specific meta tags for search engine optimization. You can add these cards in your code as HTML, and the search engine easily can use it. On the other hand, there is another important part which called the server-side rendering, which we in Flutter we need some more time to add, and make a great fix for it. But it's a matter of time. Don't worry, the Flutter team know about it. Flutter support accessibility and all other things like screen readers and everything. This is very important feature in their roadmap, and I know that
it's released now.
Yes.
Premium support for web now works.
Exactly. So it's a matter of time. Just we need the community help, exactly like the iOS junk issue. It's a matter of time. We need more issues, fill more issues about what you need, and it's very easy to add that to Flutter source code. I remember 3 years ago when I started with Flutter, I was talking with Feslad. He was a project manager for Flutter. He moved now to Fuchsia operating system, 2 years ago or 3 years ago. But at the time, I was very easy to reach Flutter team, the Flutter developer, the people are responsible for Flutter, and telling them about the issues I am facing. And they are fixing this issue and merging it in Flutter framework. Exactly what happened with Arabic issue at the time, if Simon remember, when he helped me. Yes, we fixed the Arabic support in Flutter before Flutter 1.0.
That took a while. We got there in the end, though.
We could talk about that for hours.
Yeah. And this is the beauty.
Details.
Yeah.
One other thing, though, too, because you said that we need more issues. What that means, folks, if that didn't make any sense to you and you didn't see the keynote, Eric Seidel, the lead engineer for the team, said they want you to file more issues on things like SEO and the iOS jank issue because they need data.
Yeah, it needs to have that. Needs to have like reproducible steps, a good example. Yep. You know, don't just say it does not work, because that is not an issue ticket. We don't want that.
And the thing is when they've dug into it, and they have been digging into it. The problem is with iOS jank, there's all kinds of little conditions that can cause it. So it's kind of what we call a game of whack-a-mole. It's a game where a little head comes up and you hit it with a hammer. But as soon as you hit it with a hammer, another one pops up. So as soon as you whack one cause and fix it, 2 or 3 more get discovered. And the only way that the team knows about them is you.
I was going to say, there is something to be said about this in terms of when the Flutter team are dealing with a very low level. So that means anything that they modify and anything they're working on impacts everything, all the stacks above that, right? So what they're looking for are lots of top level examples that can tell them what are the unique places they need to fix it and the very bottom of the stack. And it's very important for them to get a wide range of use cases. Questions?
Oh, interesting question here I want us to look at, and it's a scary one. And we see a lot of the other ones. We will get to everybody we can, but there's a really interesting one that's kind of scary.
Yeah,
there was.
I'll tell you what, if you read the PRs, you probably know as much or more than we do, Jimmy. But it's always one of those things where you ask somebody and their answer is that the weather is lovely today. So they're not telling us anything.
We know nothing.
They're not telling you, but don't think we haven't been asking.
Those who know can't.
Arabic.
I was just going to say, those who know can't tell. Those who tell don't know.
Yeah, but one thing I do know, there was some talk a while back about Armadillo being pulled from there. Now, Armadillo was the Flutter UI, and there was talk about Armadillo was pulled from the repo, so maybe Flutter wasn't going to be part of it, and yada yada yada. And then it was found. Armadillo was found again in a different part of the repo. So people got all confused, and I went and asked someone who works on this. Now, Fuchsia's an open source project, okay? Doesn't matter where they work. This person is working on an open source project on Fuchsia, and I asked them what was the deal with Flutter being pulled out of the UI, and they looked at me like I had 3 heads.
It's not been pulled out. It's been moved.
Yeah, they said, what do you mean pulled out of the UI? I said, well, there's talk it's been pulled out of the UI. And they look at me and they said, well, that's news to me and I work on it. So I was like, they said maybe somebody should have sent me a message because I'm still working on this thing.
I was like,
though, okay.
They have an IRC channel, I think, still, the Fuchsia IRC channel. So you can go in there and lurk and see what's happening, right? It's all been developed in open.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all open source. I mean, don't think this is all Google. It's not.
And like most places, especially Flutter team, we want all your contributions. So anyone that's developing that wants to work on something, raise the issue ticket, make a discussion, and then come to a solution. I have a question here that's coming from the audience. Humpday Q&A. Maybe an idea to start a jumpstart day for newbies with no background in programming. Something Sometimes it's a deep dive, just an idea for a 50-year-old newbie. That's exactly what we just spent a month doing.
Yes. 30 days of Flutter.
I want to share something here for just a moment. And it's going to take me a moment to pull it up.
You're finding that, I'm going to mention that, we've done 30 days of Flutter. So if you go to this channel, this YouTube channel, go to the main channel homepage, you'll find there's a playlist called 30 Days of Flutter. And it's a kickoff, and it takes you to an event page where you can get resources that take you through the steps of starting with Flutter from ground zero. So try it out. It's the best I could really suggest for the moment. There's so much to learn, so much material, but don't let it weigh you down. That's for a start, right? Like everyone can get there. It just, you have to persevere. Try again.
So what I would like to share, that is a perfect one, Stefan, because I started with a couple of videos, and I've been thinking about it about every day, how I should continue my video series. And the video series is titled, Explain It to Me Like I'm 5.
Yeah.
Okay. That's part of my intro right there. So explain it to me like I'm 5. That is perfect for people. But the reason that I'm doing that, in short, you have to remember people are coming at Flutter not just from mobile. The mobile devs from iOS and Android have it easy. Okay. Remember, you've also got people coming from web, and they've got to wrap their head around a lot of this back-end stuff. And also, I have spoken at VB and .NET groups because they're looking at Flutter and they're saying, you know what, maybe this has made front-end easy enough for me to jump in. And we have people who don't understand what a callback is trying to come into Flutter. And before you laugh too much, back-end people at that one, we have a lot of back-end people who don't understand what an aspect ratio is. And now the front-end people are laughing. So we have to teach for all of these people. And it can be pretty difficult at times.
I was going to say, one of the biggest problems that we had trying to organize some of these events is just because Flutter has such a wide-ranging audience, right? So we have a lot of beginners coming in that have not ever touched programming before. We've got people that are coming in from only knowing one aspect of programming, like they've only ever done web before and JavaScript. And why do I have to build an APK? What's an APK? Like these are all like completely different, programming paradigms that they've never even looked at before. So to try and cover everything is pretty much impossible. So we need to pick and choose our battles. But there is other people just like you watching this right now that are in the community. So go use the community resources. It's flutter.dev/community, which I'll bring up on the screen. Mm-hmm. Go there, and you'll be able to find Slack, Discord, everything, all the ways of communicating with other people around Flutter. You find it there, and you'll definitely be able to help get your questions answered. Randall might be the one that's answering some of those questions if they're in the public channels, right?
I'm on most of them, and the trouble I'm having now is people are now private messaging me, thinking I'm now their personal consultant, and it doesn't really work that way.
I want to touch on that, okay, because that's become a serious problem. I joke around a lot, but I'm not joking now. Please do not DM people. Okay, we have 12,755 people as of this morning in the Flutter community Slack. If everyone DM'd us, it would be completely insane. Nash had to shut off his DMs in Twitter because people were bombarding him with help me, help me, help me, help me. People have tried to send me messages on Facebook, and my Facebook is only for family and for people I knew when I was 12. So, really don't send people DMs like that. A lot of times don't try to friend them on Facebook because that's for their family. Friend us on LinkedIn. Send us LinkedIn stuff. That's for professional. One other thing real quick, I'm going to put another link in the chat here because we were talking about community resources, the Flutter community medium. And Simon, I'm sorry, you wanted to keep going with that?
I was just going to mention that we have such a just if you ask a question in the public chat, everyone that's looking at that public chat gets the answer. and everyone learns with everyone else. You ask in a private chat, only that person gets the answer, right? And that's why we just don't do that, right? What we want to do is for everyone to be raised up together, right? Everyone should be learning together. So ask your questions in the public chat rooms, please. And I know it's difficult. I know asking tech questions can be very difficult when you're like, why doesn't this look right or shape right? Get your MS Paint out and draw some pictures and post an image, whatever it is, to get your point across, right? Or there's other places like you may have to start a conversation with someone and ask for some help from the community in terms of doing a screen share, going on a Zoom chat or whatever it might be. But when it's to one of the members of the community, like we can only answer these in public because it's like there's so many people, right? It's just impossible.
Well, and another thing too is definitely don't DM, and especially we get buried with DMs like Raf is saying. Raf gets them too. How do I build my app? Or my app is not working. Help me. Or please help train me in Flutter. It's like, sometimes you have to delete 20 of these a day and you just can't respond anymore.
But however, please, Randall, enlighten us.
Real short. First off, absolutely. Also, if you're asking in public, it won't be just me having my time to answer. I may not know the answer. I sometimes refer to some of my answers as I have to go to smarter people than me, registered trademark, because it's like I don't know the answer to that. But I want to cover one quick thing just before we're almost out of time, so I'll wrap it up quickly. I want to talk about the power of issues. A lot of people are saying, how do I contribute to Flutter? How do I contribute to Flutter? It's doing so much for me. I want to be able to contribute back. So I filed a really brief issue. I was going through some detailed source code in the Flutter SDK, and there was a word that was constrains rather than constraints like it should have been. Didn't affect a thing because it's the same variable in both the parameter and where it's used. But it irked me that it was wrong. So I filed the issue, I think only a week and a half ago. It was tagged as good first issue. Somebody else picked it up the next day, and now that person's code has contributed to the Flutter SDK. It went live with 2.0.
Nice.
That's the important thing to remember.
That's another point to mention. There is a tag on the GitHub repo, first issues. I think what was it again, Randall? It was.
I think it's good first time issue or something like that.
Something like that. You'll find it in the tag cloud thing on GitHub, and you can go ask if you can contribute. If you find an issue no one's picked up yet, go pick up that issue, try and fix it. If you feel that you've got the knowledge and capability to fix it. I mean, some of these are just, as Randall was saying, documentation fix, which is right in there. Just edit the file, submit a PR, link it to the issue, right?
Well, it was a code fix, but yes, the code had to be changed in both the parameter and the use of it. The actual code was wrong. Yeah.
So we've been going for about 2 hours now. Has anyone got any wrap up things they want to talk about?
Yeah, I would love to just mention, it's come up. I've seen it in the questions a few times. It came up in Twitter a few times yesterday in a few places that I saw it. Some questions about the Fluent UI. So obviously, if you're in the Windows world, you're familiar with Fluent. That's kind of the Microsoft design pattern, similar to Cupertino and Material. There are a few packages out there from the community. There's actually a Microsoft package, but that is just the Fluent icon pack. And it is something that we're looking at about. We've been talking about, as Andre mentioned earlier, this is just the first thing that we've contributed directly, and there's a whole slew of things that we're looking at and trying to prioritize and decide what makes sense for us to focus on and move forward with. So definitely look for more stuff coming from Microsoft as we dive further into this journey that we're on.
Really appreciate you coming on, guys, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to love to work with the foldable stuff. I know I am. I think there's a really good, interesting marketplace for that, and apps are only going to benefit from having the capabilities to span and work with larger screen devices, and especially with desktop, web, and other form factors. Making that sort of change is what really makes a difference. So thank you,
Ahmed.
Actually, also I forgot to mention a conical announcement, and also what will happen for desktop industry. Imagine the old ERP systems, and their UI. They are using some standard things for UI, and now you can use Flutter. You can put animation in your desktop application easily using Flutter, it open a new era of development for desktop application. It filled the gap between mobile application and desktop application, because in mobile we find that it's interactive and people can see a lot of good things. You can do the same thing and you can provide the same experience with Flutter on desktop application. Also, I want to thank John, because before I thought that Microsoft was using Metro style 5 or 6 years ago. So Fluent is a new version of Metro, or
yeah, it's kind of the evolution. Yeah, it's the evolution, I would say.
Yeah, I love
into
Metro.
the newer modern look.
You know, because material design now is what Metro style did before. Metro, things need to be flat and things can be far distance. Thanks for Metro style. It inspired Apple and inspired Google in material design and Cupertino style. And now I'm very happy to see Fluent, and I'll be very happy to check it and know that its standards. Thanks, John.
Just two other things real quick. I'm trying to be fast here. There was a conversation that I had with somebody from the Flutter team about 1.5 years ago, because I thought that Flutter was just going to replace Java and the Java runtime environment because it could run just about everywhere. And they said, no, full stop. And they went on to explain the thing is that the JRE knows how to access all the different hardware and has all the drivers. And they said that there was no way in 1,000 years that Google was going to give the Flutter team enough of a budget to hire enough people to write all the different drivers that would be needed for all the hardware. But you can, you're the community. So if there are drivers needed, please do, because that's going to become important with desktop. And the other thing is, yes, we didn't have a lot of code today. Simon and I have been talking about that. We're trying to figure out how to get questions from the community about what to code. We're trying to figure out if we're going to try to get them ahead of time or just live. And there's so much to cover with Engage. We might be doing a lot of talking for the next couple of weeks, but believe me, code is on our mind. And I'm sure it's on yours too.
And just to mention that we will be back here next Wednesday,
Yes.
same time, 9 a.m. PST, 5 p.m. UTC, and we'll see you then. Hey guys, thanks for coming.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Bye.